How do I interpret emissions of car operated over in this sentence? I was trying to answer a question on skeptics.stackexchange.com, where we found this paragraph in a scientific report. This compares to 1,374 tons per day statewide for passenger cars. While reductions from gasoline-C marine engines are not included in California's SIP as a planned measure for meeting attainment goals, the impact of outboard and personal watercraft engines on the state's total emissions inventory makes control of this category of emissions necessary. Table 1 lists the relative contribution of outboard and personal watercraft exhaust emissions in California in tons per day. As a comparison to other sources, the exhaust emissions from 2 hours of personal watercraft operation is equivalent to the emissions from a 1998 passenger car operated over 100,000 miles. The sentence in bold created a lot of confusion, since Stienstra, 1998, wrote an article, cited the report and paraphrased it like this. The State Air Resources Board is also considering taking statewide action against personal watercraft, after a staff report said that 2 hours of exhaust emissions from a jet ski is equivalent to the emissions created by driving a 1998 automobile 100,000 miles. While users in skeptics.stackexchange.com interpreted as 2 hours of use of a jet ski produces the same pollution as 2 hours of driving a 1998 car with 100,000 miles on the clock. And not driving a 100,000 miles with that car. Another user here found another interpretation. All the watercrafts operating in California together produce in 2 hours the same pollution as one car driven 100,000 kilometers. Is Stienstra, 1998's interpretation the intended meaning and why? Could we be 100% sure? Stienstra, T., 1998, July 8. U.S. Park Service seeks ban on jet skis. 950 square miles of Bay Area waters would be affected. San Francisco Examiner. Retrieved from this URL.
The paragraph quoted from Stienstra, which equates 2 hours of exhaust emissions from one jet ski with those from a car traveling 100,000 miles, does not coincide with reality. The statement that all the watercrafts operating in California together produce in 2 hours the same pollution as one car driven 100,000 kilometers actually is fairly accurate. Here is the sentence prior to what was quoted from a scientific report. Emissions of hydrocarbons, HC, and oxides of nitrogen, NOx, from outboard and personal watercraft in 1997 totaled 312 tons per day. That number of tons per day equals 26 tons per 2 hours, which is close to the approximately 26 tons of CO2e an average car emits while traveling 100,000 kilometers. This figure arises as follows, from the EPA's refs.html, section miles driven by the average passenger vehicle per year, average car emissions are 4.20 by 10-4 metric tons CO2e per mile. For 100,000 miles, that's a total of 42 metric tons CO2e, CO2 equivalent, which encompasses carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, all expressed as carbon dioxide equivalents. Emissions per 100,000 kilometers is about 5/8 as much, or about 26 tons. More precisely, 26.098 tons equals 42 tons 100,000 miles / 160,934 kilometers, but even 2 significant digits is too many. Edit, Brian M. Hunt asks. So is it right to do the math as follows, 312 tons / 508, 270 personal watercraft plus outboard / 2 hours being 278 grams per watercraft / outboard per hour. The figure of 508,270 watercraft, 161,898 personal plus 346,372 outboard, is shown in Table 1 on page 2 of the report mentioned earlier, which is a draft proposal summary from the State of California Air Resources Board called Proposed Regulations for Gasoline Spark Ignition Marine Engines. The arithmetic shown in Hunt's comment is correct. For example, if you type 312 tons / 508, 270 halves in grams into a Google search box, it shows a result of slightly over 278.4 grams, or about 0.0003 short tons, 2,000 pound tons. Note that a metric ton is about 1.1 short tons. The EPA refs.html page mentioned above shows its data using metric tons, 1,000 kilogram tons, and I'd supposed the Air Resources Board report did so too, because metric units are used in its figures 1 and 2 and tables 2 and 3. If so, average emissions per watercraft per hour would be about 307 grams per hour rather than 278. If not, my earlier figure of 26.098 metric tons would need to be recast as 28.77 short tons, which still is quite comparable to 26 tons.